Hello again on the UK edition, and time to say goodbye to 2016 and what a year this has been. We do tend to say often that such and such a thing has been historical, but this year has been historical like no other. And so as we turn the pages of the calendar, which is to say swipe the screen on the calendar page, let's look back on some of the milestones through the year, starting with the biggest of them all by far.
The country has just taken part in a giant democratic exercise, perhaps the biggest in our history. The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
Good morning, everybody. The sun has risen on an independent, united kingdom. And just look at it, even the weather's improved. It's a victory for ordinary people, decent people. It's a victory against the big merchant banks, against the big businesses, and against big politics.
You know, they used to say once, when France catches cold, Europe begins to sneeze. We heard it said not very long back that when Greece runs into debt, Europe begins to sweat. We see now that when Britain leaves the European Union, the world shivers, and Britain shivers in fear, but also in excitement.
After the trauma over the Brexit vote and the turmoil in the markets, leaders and officials have been looking for the lighter touch to set people at ease, but also giving them serious reassurance.
Wimbledon was not enough this year, so we've decided to give you the treat of serial resignations across our system of government, major political disruption in all our major parties, all for your enjoyment.
You know you're in interesting times if the resignation of the Prime Minister is the third item on the news. So I think we are in interesting times, or were. And in this question of moving, as it were, through this divorce process into acceptance, I honestly think we've moved quite quickly beyond acceptance into opportunity.
A particular focus is the possibility of a new trade agreement between India and Britain.
It has been very frustrating that the EU-India free trade agreement has been so slow in making progress. Launched in 2007, it's suffered several pauses. I'm not sure whether it's moving at all at the moment. I hope it is, in discussions. But it has been taking too long to make progress, and I sincerely hope that a tighter bilateral trade agreement between the UK and India, notwithstanding the opportunities for British wine exports, which I believe are substantial, can make rapid progress now.
A police report on a rise in incidents of racist abuse after the Brexit vote has raised concerns about the extent of race hatred that the vote has unleashed and about the consequences it can have for the future of minorities. The figures themselves were alarming.
So those were based on the figures given by the UK's National Chief Counsel in charge of policing, and what it reflected was that there was a 20% increase in hate crimes in comparison with the same period, corresponding period last year.
On the optimistic side, many believe that those were passing incidents and no reason for long-term worry.
So there were some ugly incidents, but if you look at the totality, I think it was a lot of exaggeration. They talked about mainly verbal violence. mainly from Jewish and Muslim communities.
And the impact of the big story in India, demonetisation, a move that has created a hole in just about every Indian's pocket in Britain and in Europe. What has that meant and what could that mean ahead?
Indians in Britain with rupee notes at home were caught unawares by the demonetisation of 500 rupee and 1000 rupee notes, even if these problems are small compared to those faced in India. Indian banks made clear that they will not exchange old notes for new ones. Frequent travellers and those with close family ties in India were particularly affected.
I was in Hyderabad in India that evening when Mr. Modi made this announcement of withdrawal of these notes from circulation of 500 rupees and 1000. Within an hour or so, I started getting phone calls from my constituents and the concerned people who have some amount with them, how it's going to affect them.
Almost every Indian abroad keeps some rupees to handle expenses on arrival and through their stay.
There are many frequent travellers to India who find it easy to have 5,000-10,000 rupees in their pocket when they arrive at Delhi or any other airport to get a taxi, to buy some food before they arrive to their destination. So it was just a convenience rather than a business. So a lot of Indians living outside India are affected, though it is small amounts, but the still amount is amount.
For millions of travellers, the beginning of winter is the time to start moving out of Europe. This year, travel agents booking for India face new hurdles.
Basically, even we are receiving so many calls regarding the same currency issues while they're going to India, where they can change the currency and how they will be helped. So we just request to Indian government that make sure when the tourists arrive to India airport, any airport, so make sure there should be no queues and they can change easily all the currency, whatever currency they have, they get the Indian rupees.
And it doesn't help that this blow has hit the business in peak season.
Tourism is a very, very big revenue as well for the government. They should think all these things beforehand, even though now they should do it as soon as possible, especially for the NRIs or tourist people or anybody who are traveling from any other country to India. They shouldn't be punished or they shouldn't be penalized, so that they should be, all the facilities should be there for, especially for foreigners or NRIs, so that there shouldn't be any problem for them.
We have about 1.5 million Indians in the UK officially, maybe 1.8 million. Add another at least 250,000 across Europe. You could be looking at 1.5 to 2 million.
Right.
On average, it's very likely that someone will have about 10,000 rupees to
That's a
handle
good
expenses when you arrive in India. So what kind of money are we talking about that is sitting in 500,000 rupee notes in the UK and Europe?
So
how much?
Converted to millions of pounds, will come to about 100 million pounds.
So there's 100 million pounds worth of money in those old 500,000 rupee notes in the UK and Europe.
All of which may not be in 500,000 rupee notes, it could also be in 100 rupees, 10s and 5s. But even assuming that the entire amount is in 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, the entire money can be taken back legally into India and deposited.
It is in total a fairly significant amount. We are talking about upwards of 100 million pounds.
Yes.
Now, what is the government going to do about this and what are people going to do about this?
Yeah, but this money was permitted for you to be taken out of India only for immediate expenses because you're a regular traveller. It's not a bonus given by government of India.
No, it's not a bonus. It's your own money.
Yeah, correct.
What you want
so
in
it's
India
legal
to
tender.
convert it, but it's your own money.
Correct.
So
it's legal tender.
Yeah, no, legal tender, but not
for
anymore. It's now
expenses.
waste paper. That legal tender is now waste paper.
Immediate expenses. You can send it back through your friend. You can send it back through your relative. You can open an NR account to one of the branches here who will facilitate that and have the money deposited in India.
But it's a long and complicated haul to get that little money back. A lot of people may think it's not worth it.
I know. Two things in this. One, if you think it's a little money, which it is for a lot of people who have 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, they probably won't bother about it. Like we are not bothered when we had euros, for example. We carried euros when we went to India, and later on we were found that it's only charity money when we come back to UK that went waste with us. Same thing whenever there is a demonetization this way, some people do lose their currency notes.
It's been over a month now since India demonetized its 500 and 1000 rupee notes. Lord Meghnad Desai was in India when the Prime Minister made the announcement. He believes this is a positive move by the Prime Minister and will help tackle the issue of corruption and black money in the country, and the inconvenience faced by the country will return to normalcy fairly soon.
I think it's very good that people get the habit of not having too much cash at home. They get the banking habit. I hope our banks become better. But that will put a considerable brake on corruption. Because, it's always easy to give bribes in cash. Of course, you can give bribes in gold or whatever it is. It's always easy to cash. And I think that route has been made more difficult. That's one good thing. Where I think the government and the officials missed out wasn't thinking through about availability of new money. I think it was a mistake to make the new money a different length from the old money. And they should also not have printed a 2000 rupee note. They should have printed a 1000 rupee note.
Quick break now, and then let's catch up with some of the other landmark moments through the year.
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam, Supalam, Malayaj Sheetalam, Shasya Shamalam, Mataram, Vande Mataram, Shubhra Jyosna Pulakitayamini, Pullakusumita Drumadala Shobhini, Suhasini, Sumadura Bhashini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram.
Welcome back. Now, wasn't this the year that saw the launch of those direct Air India flights to Ahmedabad, when a chap came the other way, all alone in a three-wheeler from Hyderabad to London? When we faced the question, can a Sikh marry a non-Sikh in a Gurdwara, when Keith Vaz was in the news? A year also that brought reassuringly more of the familiar, from Diwali in Leicester to swords at Navratri.
It has been a long wait to join this queue for a direct flight from London to Ahmedabad. Air India launched the service on Independence Day on August 15th, in line with a promise that Prime Minister Narendra Modi made to the Indian community at the Wembley Stadium in November last year. Passengers who travelled earlier via Delhi or Mumbai looked delighted.
I used to travel direct long ago, and I'm surprised that it was stopped. It should have never stopped. I'm very happy that it restarted.
Very, very important. Especially for the elderly people, they do not have a hassle if they have a direct flight.
You're walking down a street in Hyderabad and a tuk-tuk comes along, a slightly funny looking tuk-tuk, but you stop it, he stops. You say you want to go to Charminar, he says, sorry, I'm going to London. And that's exactly what Naveen does in this tuk-tuk right here. He's driven from Hyderabad to London.
Look a little closely, and this is an auto rickshaw with a difference. The small print on its side says what its roof announces. This is a part solar-powered auto rickshaw, and for the rest, it runs on battery. Which is why 35-year-old Hyderabad engineer Naveen Rabeli displayed it at the Low Carbon Vehicle Exhibition in Millbrook, about 50 miles north of London.
This auto rickshaw, designed with a little help from low-energy experts in India, made a 14,000-kilometer journey from Hyderabad to London starting in February this year and travelling through 13 countries, including Iran, Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Germany and France.
It was my dream to travel to UK by road and to do the spice route, which people have been doing it for ages. But I wanted to do it in a more clean way. So that's why I built my own car, traveled in it, and on the way I really wanted to inspire young people.
He's come green all the way. He's a Pakka Hyderabad man, though he spent several years also in Australia.
I bought an old tuk-tuk rickshaw in India, diesel rickshaw from Piaggio, and then I had to take out the diesel motor, I had to get everything out and then make it electric and solar. So first 2 prototypes I put my own money. The third prototype I was funded by crowdfunding. Companies helped me like CPC, Avaso and Kalapura Parambil. They helped me to build this car again.
You, without having a formal role, what level of communication do you have with the team and how do you play your role? Of course, they all look up to you, but beyond that.
I'm like an elder brother to most of the guys in the team, so I've shared my number with them, and I get a lot of phone calls, and it's always a confidential call because I don't want things to be discussed in public and done things openly, because it is about trust and that confidence that the thing whatever we discuss, that information is not disclosed, and I believe that whatever I'm looking to share with players, if that can help them, then it's wonderful. But having played this sport for nearly 25 years, I've got things to share with them, and they have that confidence and trust in me. It's always nice to share.
What is finally your new role in cricket?
Well, my role, I don't require a designation for
not a formal designation, but let's say your mission, your interest.
So whatever I've been doing for past 25 years continues to be my role. Earlier, yes, I was part of the team, and we shared the same dressing room. We would travel together, have dinners together. Sometimes we end up having dinners together with the same players, but I'm not traveling with the team. But with today's technology, I'm a few seconds away.
Great talking to you, Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Brooks Gordon, the Home Affairs Select Committee has been considering proposals to criminalize the one paying for sexual services rather than the one offering them. This is a bold new move. It's been in practice in a few countries. Where is it at in Britain?
The Home Affairs Committee looked at all the evidence, and they said that there was no evidence to suggest that criminalising clients helped either the client, the seller or society. And they were quite right to reach that conclusion, because that is exactly where all the academic evidence leads. The actual law to criminalise clients emerged from Sweden, and it emerged very interestingly at a time of very febrile atmosphere in Sweden, when Sweden was discussing having a referendum about whether to join the European Union or not. And the discourse around criminalising prostitution emerged because there'd been a lot of inward migration into Sweden. Some were prostitutes from Nigeria, and there was a little bit of public nuisance, and they emerged as scapegoats in an immigration argument around the referendum. And then that continued while Sweden were exporting and advocating this law. They were then going through another referendum, which they then had in 2003, about whether to join the euro or not. And just to explain how febrile things were in that country when this referendum was ongoing, Cabinet Minister Anna Lindh was murdered, not unlike, tragically Joe Cox was murdered.
Now, this question has come up in Britain, of course, because of the controversy surrounding Mr. Keith Vaz. Now, he has chaired the select committee that has considered this question. Is there an issue here, whatever one's personal views on this, is there an issue here about conflict of interest or non-disclosure of certain kinds at certain levels?
I don't think there's a conflict of interest at all. In a lot of circumstances, when people are giving evidence to a committee, experience is taken as expertise. So that's not the case, I believe. The issue arose and was put before the committee subsequent to work by the all-party parliamentary group on prostitution, the APPG. So it wasn't that Mr. Vaz set the remit for this at all. This came to him, and he had also chaired a select committee many years ago on trafficking, at which prostitution was discussed and evidence was heard. So it hasn't arisen from him. The issue of disclosure is another issue. It would have been better for him had he disclosed.
The Totteridge Academy in Barnet in North London was home to the reliving of an ancient Rajput tradition. Many from the Rajput Samaj of the UK, dressed in their Rajput best, complete with moustaches and turbans, turned out to relive an ancient tradition. Men marched sword in hand, and so did the women, to pray to the swords. Worship of the sword among Rajputs goes back many centuries, and in their prayers, both young and old, both men and women, remembered their forefathers who had lived by the sword, and many who died by the sword. The men and then the women marched in carrying swords to show what they can still do with them, and their prowess was very soon on display. The talented were presented certificates to honor them and to encourage them to return next year with more swords and skills. The sword ritual has many takers among young Rajputs, and they have their own reasons.
First of all, this is not a dance. This is a way of practicing our martial tradition. Obviously, Rajputs being about the martial race, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to invoke the goddess. We're trying to get the goddess to take up residence within this sword.
In Leicester, Diwali begins many days before Diwali with the switching on of its famous lights. The lights adorn Belgrave Road and Melton Road, once marked for demolition and now known as the Golden Mile after the arrival of Indians in the city. Leicester is known to have perhaps the biggest Diwali celebrations outside India. They may even be the biggest in the world because in India, people celebrate at home rather than in public. This year, they've made history and found their place in history. Diwali lights and the story of these lights is now a feature at the New Walk Museum. That opens another chapter in the record books of Leicester. The exhibition figures images from early Indian days in the 1970s that were not as bright as those today. The Diwali entry into the museum followed an application for lottery funds from Navrang Arts. The exhibition has made Leicester proud of its Indian inclusion.
I think one of the things is it shows us what a super diverse city this is and how tolerant and how interested in everybody else's faiths and everybody else's stories. And really Diwali in Leicester is such a happy occasion. It's really brilliant to be in Leicester during Diwali.
For Theresa May, this was her first Diwali reception as Prime Minister. But for Indians, this is an annual event now. Diwali has become a set feature of 10 Downing Street. Hindus, Sikhs, Jains and Indians of all religions gathered at 10 Downing Street for the festivities this year. For many of the Indian dignitaries, this was their first meeting with the new Prime Minister. Theresa May lit the traditional lamp amid prayers and conveyed Diwali greetings to all British Indians.
Just heard some references to the meaning of Diwali, and when we look at it, I think its relevance extends beyond India, beyond the Indian diaspora, even beyond the Hindus, Jains, Sikhs and Buddhists who in different ways mark the festival. Because its messages apply to every single one of us, whatever our background and whatever our faith.
And time now to head for the next milestones ahead. Very best wishes for the new year from all of us here at News 18. And let's not start the new year on a depressing note by making resolutions we know we will not keep. Let's resolve to not make a resolution. See you soon in the new year.